Hey there everyone, I'm Don, Professor Goe, and welcome to the Goe Pro Travel Tale Podcast. Travel far and travel often. Hello everyone, welcome to the Goe Pro Travel Tales Podcast. Today we are talking about one of the most stunning areas in the South Pacific. That's not Australia, that's my bias speaking. We're talking about Tahiti, and we are talking to Norman Schaefer, and he is from Far and Away Adventures Tahiti, and he is one of our suppliers that helps us with all the amazing trips that Goe offers in to French Polynesia, more commonly known as Tahiti. So welcome, Norman. How are you today?
Great to be with you.
Thank you very much. We always ask, where are you actually coming to us from? Are you in the US? Are you actually in Tahiti?
I'm actually in Victoria, British Columbia, on the west.
Really? Okay. I have a son out there who's just finished a season of tree planting, and he's sort of bumming around in a car waiting for the next season to go back and plant trees. So he's probably in your neighborhood,
Good in
literally.
the summer, outside.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we always start off our podcasts to let our listeners know a little bit about our guest speaker. So you're in Victoria, BC, Canada. So what is your connection to Tahiti, and why are we speaking to you today as an expert on Tahiti?
Well, I'd say probably about 18 years ago, I went to Tahiti for my first time, and absolutely fell in love with it. I actually went with my family and with my children. At the time, I only had 5 kids. I have
Only
8
five.
now. They've all
Wow.
been to Tahiti, yes. But I brought my kids there, and we actually went for 2 months, and I fell in love with the islands. There was so much warmth and friendliness in these islands that since then I've just returned over and over and over again. I've been to over 25 of the French Polynesian islands now, and I can't go there. I have to find a new place or a new island to visit. It's so huge, these islands. So every time I go, I visit another island.
Okay, and we will touch on the expanse of the French Polynesia island group in a minute. Um, so your first trip was with your kids, as you mentioned, and you went down
hmm
for 2 months. Was it a choice of 2 months from the outset, or was it something you went down and ended up staying for 2 months? Because most people, when they look at Tahiti from a professional point of view, i.e., travel agents speaking to globetrotters looking to travel to Tahiti, 2 months would not be the normal request of time down there. So I'm just curious to know why 2 months was your choice.
Well, at the time, I actually had a roommate from university that I'd kept in touch with, and he had hooked us up with places to stay, and we, as a family, had just really wanted to immerse ourselves in the culture and in what it was like, and so I had uh, someone kind of take over things at work for a period of time. And once I had that arranged, we just went for a little bit more time. I really wanted to familiarize myself with these islands, and I knew how big they were as well. So, uh, combination of having a few local connections really helped as well along the way.
Right. So was that also the reason you chose Tahiti, say over Fiji, Samoa, the Cook Islands? Was it because you had some local connections down there, or was it something from childhood? I have a fascination with Tahiti because of the early sea explorers, and they used it as a port of call for and other reasons as well. Was it
Yeah.
something like that?
Well, I had lived in France for a few years, and I really wanted to have a chance to use my French. And I thought, well, what better way to than to go to Tahiti? And so that was a little bit of it. But yeah, it was just on the same trip. We did about 2 weeks in the Cook Islands at the time, and so we did the Cook Islands first, and then Tahiti, which are a great combination of islands. But yeah, then we ended up spending the most of the time there. But having those local connections did help with the amount of time that we wanted to spend there.
Right. So again, going back to this first trip, we'll get into your more recent trips as the conversation
Yeah.
continues. But on that first trip, did you do what most people would do on a first trip to Tahiti and hit the main island of Tahiti and then across to Bora Bora? Actually, before we get into that, let me just, well, I'll have you explain to everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
generalizes the island group as Tahiti, but it's technically named French Polynesia and it's made up of multiple
Yeah.
island groups. Can you maybe just give us a quick overview of the island groups before we get into some details here?
Yeah, so there are 5 regions in French Polynesia that people can visit. The most popular and the most common one that people go to are the Society Islands, and that is the where the international airport of Papeete is on the island of Tahiti itself. But 30 minutes away by catamaran ferry is the island of Moorea, which I did do on my first trip there, as well as many other trips. It's so easy to get to. You don't have to get on another plane. Um, and, 30 minutes later, you're on the island that all the Tahitians go for holidays. Um, Also within the Society Islands are Bora Bora, which everyone has heard of and wants to visit. And it's, yes, you should go there,
Yep.
especially on a first trip. And I did go on my first trip. I think I've been there about 6 times now. But then there's also Huahine, Raiatea, Taha'a, and even a little tiny island of Maupiti in those Society Islands. And that's kind of the main island group that people, if you're going on a cruise, you'll usually, if it's a 7-day cruise, you're visiting those islands. Um, there, the other group of islands are the Tuamotus, and they're actually not really islands; they're atolls. So they're coral-shaped atolls. It's like a donut-shaped island, if you will, with a lagoon in the middle. So it's like a volcano that erupted thousands of years ago, and as it sunk, there's just this coral, really low-lying coral reef that's left, and the marine life inside the lagoon is breathtaking. So the Tuamotus, and there's dozens and dozens of Tuamotu islands. Uh, then you go a little further afield to the Marquesas in the northeast. Uh, it's where tattooing originated. It's actually a completely different culture than the Tahitian culture as far as the music and the dances go. Um, and then in the southwest are the Austral Islands, which is another group of islands. Can be have a bit more of differences in the seasons in the Austral Islands. And then in the southeast are the Gambier Islands, which are just a few islands really close together, um, but again, very distinct area. And there's only like 1 or 2 flights a week to the Gambier Islands.
Right. Yeah, we were speaking to Dan, who looks after the tourism aspects of Tahiti here in North America or Canada, primarily, and North America. And I've done a lot of chats with people about Tahiti, but I never knew, or it escaped my memory at the time, that tattooing was or came from the Tahitian Islands, and it was brought to Europe through back to my sort of fascination with the area, the many sailors in the early days who drop into
Hmm.
Tahiti. They tattooed by the local Tahitians. They went back to Europe, and that was became a fad or started to grow because of that. So that was an
Yeah,
interesting.
tattoo is actually a Marquesian word,
Oh,
and so it's really more so comes from the Marquesas, but then that influence is all throughout Polynesia.
yeah, yeah, and again, a lot of the islanders, as they're generally lumped together, and that's anything from New Zealand, Cook, Samoa, etc. Yeah, they're famed for their tribal tattoos, which are very, very detailed and beautiful too.
Yeah.
So going back to that original trip, you mentioned already as you introduced the different regions to us all that you spent some time, obviously, on Tahiti, Moorea, and Bora Bora. Was the bulk of that first stay, the 2 months, in the sort of more popular islands, or did you do some exploring to the outer islands on that first trip as well?
Yeah, so we spent most of the time on the island of Tahiti, but as well as Bora Bora, actually. But we did go over to Moorea, Raiatea, Taha'a, and Maupiti even on that first trip. Um, Maupiti was like a kind of 1 day trip from Bora Bora, although nowadays I think you have to at least spend a night there.
Hmm.
I never made it to Huahine on that first trip, so I it was a good excuse to return back. You don't have to
Yeah.
do everything the first time, and I've just discovered that there's always new places to visit.
Well, yeah, because what's the actual island stroke atoll count for French Polynesia? Do you know that number off the top of your head?
I believe it's 116, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, but yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, not all 116 have development, at least for travelers on there.
Hmm.
So, again, you may know this, the answer to this question. How many islands can you visit or are accessible for travelers to visit and would be welcoming of travelers?
Um, that's a good question. I don't have an exact number. I would say there's probably about 20 to 30 that are fairly easily doable, where they have accommodations that you can actually stay in that are for tourism purposes. There are a number of different islands, however, though, that um, they do have like a handful, two or three different types of places that you can stay at, but um, they're not part of Air Tahiti, which is the domestic airline's main tourism network. So the prices do tend to go up quite a bit for those islands, like Mateva.
Hmm.
Um, but when you go there, you're really having an authentic, uh, really person to person experience with the local people that live there.
Right. And the South Pacific Islands in general are famous for their friendliness and their warmth. So, even if you
Hmm.
are of the type that wants to get away from the bigger islands and the bigger sites, by doing
Yeah.
what you say, going to say maybe off to Mativa and not being sort of in the standard tourism infrastructure, you would still be welcomed on those islands as a traveller.
Oh, certainly, yes. And on the main islands, especially, there's in the tourism industry, people do speak English. It is their third language after Tahitian and French. Um, but if you do know a little bit of French, that always helps out quite a bit while you're there.
Okay, then. So, um, your initial stay, and now let's get on to some of your other trips down there. On your initial stay, due to the length of time, were you staying in a standard type accommodation hotel resort, or were you doing homestays? Did you do a combination of both on that first trip? And what is your mode of accommodation now that you go back or have been back multiple times?
I do everything. It's so fun to try all these different experiences. So I did a lot of homestays that first time. When you have five kids in tow, and I've gone back with seven kids as well. Um, uh, you know, yeah, we did some homestay experiences, and then we also did some resort stays. So we went to the Intercontinental in Moorea, which is now closed. There are some others, but so we tried everything from the big resorts to homestays, little tiny boutique hotels as well. In Raiatea, we went to a little, it was more like a guest house style accommodation. They had three little bungalows on property on the water. And so each type of accommodation has something different to offer, and very different experience.
So you'd be the perfect person to either endorse or not, and I think you will endorse it. The fact that one, Tahiti is a great family destination, and two, traveling with a family in and around Tahiti is not a big challenge. Traveling with a family is a challenge. I have three kids. We just came back from
Hmm.
Africa this year. There are challenges with traveling as a family, but there's no added issues because it's Tahiti or because you have, in your instance, five at one stage, seven kids traveling with you. It was all
Yeah.
welcoming, easily to get things done.
Yeah, and I would say I have no issues going there. The one challenge is some accommodations will only accommodate up to three people or in a room, and it's quite common in a lot of places, maybe even four. But a lot of the overwater bungalows, for example, they're not really as geared towards families, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you're wanting that experience, you do end up having to have multiple rooms. So, but with a home kind of guest house style accommodation, there are a lot that will accommodate up to four. Once you hit that fifth, it does really complicate things a bit in French Polynesia, I'll be honest. But
Right.
uh, you just have to know what you're looking for, and you get an expert that uh, learns about the options, and it can really make a difference uh, in what you offer your clients.
And that was a beautiful segue because Go Away does have those destination specialists. So if you are a single traveler, often it's a couple going down there for romantic reasons, honeymoons, weddings, etc. But as Norman has done multiple times, family travel as well. Your destination specialist will be able to advise you on type of hotel based on budget, based on family size or group size, and what you want to do. So Tahiti, again, Tahiti and the main islands, Bora Bora, Moorea, um, do have accommodation from all different levels, but they're probably more famous for more higher end, the resort style. And a resort environment has all the infrastructure that goes with it. You can do day tours, you can do, spa treatments, all that type of thing. So that's an easy one to answer. It's all there, generally speaking, on a resort. But if you get away from the resorts, be it on the larger island Tahiti, and you're down to a 4-star, 3-star, or even the homestay environment, or particularly when you get to the outer islands, does the infrastructure drop off in respect to being able to do things? So if you're on one of the outer islands and you wanted to go diving, are there going to be dive shops or snorkel shops nearby, or is it something you need to plan ahead for to be able to just be willing to hop on a motorbike, a car, or walk down to the lagoon to do it yourself?
Yeah, really, French Polynesia is not really one that's easy to just wing it and just try to figure it out as you go. Um, and there are certain islands that have dive shops in the more remote islands. Rangiroa, Tikehau, for example, in the Tuamotus. Well, actually, maybe not Tikehau as much, but Rangiroa and Pakarava have good dive facilities. In fact, Fakarava is a World UNESCO Biosphere Reserve for its lagoon. Um, and and then Bora Bora and Moorea and the bigger islands have a lot of infrastructure for diving, for example. But when you do go out to these outer islands, you do have to plan ahead. Um, and even to maximize your time, if you kind of plan your excursions ahead of time, if you can. If there are things that you really want to make sure you include, it's always a good idea to do it. If they're nice to have or not critical, then you can just do it as you go.
Right. So if you are looking to go to Tahiti then and get off the main islands and do a more, I don't want to say authentic, but more grassroots type of experience, then as you just said, if you have things you want to do on your bucket list, you need to either check that they can be done on that island, or failing that they can't be done there, do them on, say, Tahiti, or Bora Bora or Moorea. So having been there multiple times and explored the islands probably more than most, I guess it goes without saying that if someone's heading down to Tahiti for the first time, and the reason I ask this is because I've been asked this question many times around Latin America. When people ask me about, say, Peru, I say, well, there are so many other, not nicer per se, but as interesting or different things to see than the usual Cusco, Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu, using Peru as an example. But the average person first time to Peru, they're not going to miss Cusco, Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu. So I would assume it's the same scenario for Tahiti. Someone's heading off there. They probably on their first trip, you couldn't really convince them otherwise to do other islands other than Tahiti, Moorea, Bora Bora, or a combination thereof.
Yeah, you really need to. That is a perfect kind of first trip to do. Having said that, if you're doing a cruise or something like that, then you can kind of include those two islands with a few more options quite easily. And there's even a freighter cruise, 250 passenger freight ship that goes out to the Marquesas that agents can book. That is a phenomenal experience too. Um, but that mostly covers the Marquesas, kind of further afield, and does stop in Bora Bora at the end. But Yeah, Bora Bora and Moorea are really those iconic Tahitian islands that people should visit. And if they have more than, 10 days and they want to stretch out their trip, I always say include a Tuamotu atoll in the mix because it is such a contrast to be on this low-lying atoll that doesn't not have much elevation at all, but the lagoons are just absolutely beautiful.
So just to clarify one thing, you mentioned a couple of times cruising. Now, are you talking about cruising amongst the islands in French Polynesia, or are you talking about people on a larger cruise ship using or having Tahiti as a port of call?
My preference is to go to Tahiti and start and end the cruise there because you really get an immersive experience. So, yes, if you're doing a trans Pacific cruise, you're going to hit one or two islands and then have another 3, 4 days at sea before you get to the next island outside of French Polynesia. But going to French Polynesia, there's a lot of different options um, just to visit the islands within French Polynesia. And you're basically, there's very few at sea days. You're exploring islands virtually every day.
Okay. So again, going back to the Latin comparison, often when I'm asked about the Amazon and
Hmm.
experiencing that, I always recommend a vessel simply because the vessel will get you off into the river system, and you see more of the river system versus being a lodge is like it's sort of out each day, back each day, so you don't get to explore as much. I guess the same analogy could be used for cruising around French Polynesia by a cruise. This, as you mentioned, you would get to see more islands in a shorter space of time. Is that fair?
Yes, definitely. And it's another way to be over the water without being in an overwater bungalow, if depending on what you're looking for.
Right. Um, so is someone on their first trip, again, as we both concede, they're probably going to want to just do the big ones, Tahiti, Moorea, Bora Bora, combination of all those. We have mentioned there are different levels of accommodation, but most people, particularly if they hit Bora Bora, Moorea, they're going to be looking for a resort style thing. Overwater bungalow, maybe, if not, maybe something um, a bit less expensive because the overwater bungalows are premium properties. If someone is doing that type of first time trip, but like myself, they wanted to, maybe they don't plan on coming back or they want to cover their bases. And like me and my family, we always want to do something more authentic in that we'd like to stay with the family or experience the local culture. So I hate to use the term, but I will use it for the sake of conversation. On the tourist run of those three main islands, can someone also get something more grassroots authentic as part of that experience?
You can, yes. I mean, there are guest houses on each of those islands, is one way to do it. But also in Moorea, they have a place called the Tiki Village, and it's a cultural center where you can learn the Polynesian culture. They have some day activities, and then they have a night show that with dinner that they do, and that kind of pulls you into the kind of the culture of the islands. But yeah, if you're wanting to kind of do more authentic experiences, there's guest house style accommodations, um, and I would say you get out of the main cities a bit, rent a car, although car rentals are usually about $100 a day. So, but it gives you a lot of freedom to really kind of, get out of the bigger cities and into the countryside. Um, Although I will say Bora Bora really doesn't have much of a city. We've got two or three grocery stores and three or four banks and a few tourist shops. It's People think Bora Bora, it's probably this built-up place, but they've got a road that goes around the island, and most of the resorts are on the little motus in the outer reef. So everything is really spread out and all circled around the water, which
So
is the
just on that
highlight.
point, oh, sorry, didn't interrupt there. Just on that point, you said of hiring a car. The biggest island that's mentioned is Tahiti, and you mentioned Bora Bora has a road running around it. Where else would you self drive or hire a car? Would it just be those two islands? Is there a need to even hire a car on Bora Bora?
you don't need to hire a car on Bora Bora. Some people will do it just for a day or two, just to kind of tour around if they'd like to. But all
Hmm.
of the excursion companies, whether it be on the water or on land, they'll pick you up from your accommodations, and that's included in the cost of the tour. Um, if it's a lagoon tour and you're on the water, they'll actually come by boat to pick you up. If it's a land-based trip, they'll just come by car or minivan.
Right. So you don't really need transport to do anything, as you say. Any transport to and from a tour is included in the tour. So it's more if you just want to do some self exploring on
Yeah,
either.
that's like
Yeah.
as you're kind of talking about, if you kind of just want to meet some of the local people, and you will run into people everywhere, but if you just kind of want to just go exploring a little bit more on your own, it is an option. Really, more so only in those three islands: Tahiti, Moorea, and Bora Bora. There are some car rentals on the Society Islands, but they're pretty few and far between on the
Right.
other islands outside.
Now, on in the Cooks on the main island, which I've forgotten its name, um, it's not a
Rarotonga.
big Rarotonga. Thank you. It's not a big island, and it has a bus service that loops around in both directions. Does the main island Tahiti have public transport that people could use if they want to be more independent in their explorations?
On the island of Tahiti, yes, there is. Everyone that I talk to from Tahiti, though, says don't bother.
Okay.
They say their schedules are very unreliable and you never know when they're going to show up. I don't know because I've taken them at their word and I've never tried it.
Okay, fair enough. So,
I've seen
I
people waiting at the bus stops and they could just be waiting for a long time. Who knows?
right. So I'm gathering there is something I'm just coining, or maybe I'm not coining the phrase, Tahitian time. So I would assume by that statement that the attitude in Tahiti, or sorry, the larger island groups, French Polynesia, is that very relaxed, take it easy type vibe. There's no sort of pent up energy to get things done quickly.
Yes, it's just
Yeah,
island time, and
island.
there is also some bus service on Moorea as well.
Hmm.
But I think there's two buses that do two halves of the island. Um, but apart from that, everything else is either by shuttle um, or, or having pre-arranging your transportation in advance.
Okay, which again, GoAway can arrange for your clients out there based on whatever they want to do. So, on the touring aspect, be it on the three big islands or the outer islands, can you give us a quick overview of things that you can do? Obviously, swimming, snorkeling, and in turn diving are options. But if someone is not a resort person or just a day or two of lounging and doing nothing is enough for them, and they then want to get active or cultural, what are some of the things that people can do throughout the island group?
Yeah, so the Tiki Village in Moorea is a good cultural center. Apart from that, most of the resorts will have a specific day of the week where they do a Polynesian night. It could include a fire dance show, Tahitian music, drumming, and so the music and the dancing of the island. So I always recommend, find out what day of the week it is at the resort you're staying at in advance if you uh, can, because if you're 5 nights in one place, 5 nights in another, you might miss the day of the week that they have a really good show and a dinner show. So that's great. As far as the lagoons go, most of the islands have phenomenal lagoon activities. In Moorea and Bora Bora, shark and ray snorkeling trip is a highlight where you can go out in Bora Bora. You can go a mile out into the lagoon and be waist deep in water with rays and sharks all around you. Just a little small reef tip sharks, and uh, the rays will come right up to you, and they're a little slimy, but it's quite fun to see them right up close on top of you almost. In fact, they are a lot of times. But it's very safe. You're in waist deep water, and so in Bora Bora, that's a great excursion. Bora Bora, they also have the World War II cannons up in the mountains, and so you can kind of go on a 4x4 Jeep tour, and they'll take you up this real steep terrain to see the cannons that are still up in the mountains. In fact, Bora Bora's airport was built by the U.S. military during World War II, and so there's a bit of a history there.
There was no
Um,
actual
yeah.
conflict on the islands though during the war, was it? It was just a base or
No,
a.
I think it was a holiday for those who were building the infrastructure on the
Oh,
islands. It was a beautiful place to hang out, I think, during World War II.
right. Okay. Um, when people travel to foreign lands, as I do, I like to shop or see what's for sale, and I personally like to bring back one really nice piece that sort of that either is a memory of me to that country or is a representation of that country. So for Tahiti, is shopping a big thing? And but as an extension, is there anything that is sort of famous from Tahiti that people might want to be aware of from a shopping point of view?
Well, black pearls probably jumped to the top of the list. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, the Tahiti is famous for its black pearls, and there are pearl farms throughout the island. You can actually tour the pearl farms, but a lot of people like to know that they can come back home with a black pearl. Um, if you're going to the Marquesas or some of those other islands, you can take carvings like carved drums, and just kind of like almost like a log with a hole in it, and you tap on it with what looks like chopsticks, but um, oversized chopsticks. But yeah, carvings, I would say uh, black pearls. Vanilla is another one. There's vanilla farms throughout the islands people can tour, and they make monoi oil, which is, if you look at the picture behind me, there's the coconut that they uh, make this oil out of, and yeah, so there's a number of different beauty products as well that come from the coconuts.
Is again? I've not been to Tahiti. I've been to the other Pacific Islands, but is Tahiti famous from a dress point of view? The colourful patterns and the sarongs that the females will wear, and obviously in Fiji the men wear. I don't. They look like skirts, but it's like a sarong wrapped around the waist as their
Hmm.
bottom half. Is it similar in Tahiti for the local dress?
It is, yep. They call them perios, but basically a sarong or a wrap. And they, if you go on the Tahiti tourism website, they'll even probably show you 1,000 ways to tie these sarongs.
Yeah,
And men and women both wear them. Yeah, I think in the tropics, it's just really nice to have uh, cool weather wear, and a lot of people will buy them as souvenirs. And then when you're at the beach, they're just an easy thing to wrap around when you need to go to a restaurant or something like that.
yeah, agreed. When I was in Fiji, I bought a lot of the Fijian. The men will wear the very colourful floral pattern shirts. And they're really, really nice. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that extended to Tahiti, which obviously it does as well. Um,
Hmm.
we spoke about having some authentic experiences, staying with families as an option, the cultural shows. Are there any cultural things that a traveler should be aware of when traveling to Tahiti? I'm going to make an assumption here. Again, South Pacific Island. I'm assuming they are quite devout. So therefore, like the Cooks and Fiji, that Sunday is a true day of rest and church services are a big thing on the Sunday.
It is, and you can be outside of a church building and just listen to the music, or you can just join them and go inside. Gone to some of the very remote islands. I was in an island called Rapa, which is not Easter Island, Rapa Nui, but
Yeah.
it and just being you almost vibrate right through your body with the music that comes from these Polynesians who are incredible singers. I would say French Polynesia is a bit more relaxed in its uh, Sunday things as far as stores being open and others, but it is certainly a quieter day of the week on each of the islands.
Yeah, I say I've not had the luck to go to Tahiti yet, but my experience in the Cooks, I'm far from devout, but we did go to a church service, and as you said, like it was uplifting hearing the singing. It was just, it was a spiritual on whatever view you have. It is a spiritual experience. And again, back to the they
Yeah.
welcomed us in as well. It was fantastic. The cooks
I
pretty
also,
much shut down on the Sunday, but you're saying Tahiti's a little more sort of, as you say, relaxed, and therefore a few more activities and stores and stuff will be open on a Sunday as compared to some of the other South Pacific islands.
yeah, that's right. And honestly, it's a great. I go to the church services whenever I'm there because it's a great way to meet the local people and to have conversations with them as well. And they're so welcoming, and they love to uh, see visitors come.
Yeah, yeah. Again, this I don't know why this pops into my head, but I just as we're chatting away and you're speaking of the lagoons, I have memories of some of the video that we use in our promotions and stuff, and Tahiti is stunningly beautiful. Some of the landscapes, particularly around extinct volcanoes, which are now covered in lush greenery. So the vistas are stunning. So it's great for photography. But I was just curious because it's more and more a common theme these days. Can you use drones in and around certain areas of Tahiti, or are there bans around resorts? Do you know if that's, or do you know about those rules and
I
regulations?
do.
Okay. Oh, there you
Yes,
go.
because I've taken drones there over the years, and it's
Okay.
getting harder and harder, I'll tell you.
Okay.
When I first did it, maybe 8 years ago, it was easy. I could fly it everywhere I wanted to. I got some great footage. Now it's locked out around the airport, which you may think, well, that's obvious, but yes and no, because some of these airports in the remote islands, they have one flight every 2 or 3 days. So even though it's only every 2 or 3 days, the landing and the takeoff kind of area is blocked out. And in Fakarava, that's pretty well the whole lagoon,
Oh,
or any
right.
of the land where the lagoon is. So you could take it out on the water from a boat probably. But so they are relaxed, yes, but around the resorts they do um, block it as well as at the airport. So you can kind of get some good distance um, videos with drone footage, and but it is a little trickier now with because these airports, especially on an atoll, are taking up a good chunk of
The,
the land area,
the
and yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah. The reason I bring it up because I take a lot of video when I'm traveling as well. And so for people who don't know, a couple of reasons. One is obviously safety around aircraft. Two is for privacy on the resorts, etc. It's
yeah,
also noise. And when Norman's saying they're blocked out, they literally block signals. So if you have one, I tried it on the Cooks and I couldn't, it wouldn't, I didn't know at the time it was a restricted area, but it was, the drone will not operate because they have all this blocking
hmm
technology. Um, but I guess from a photography point of view in general, it's okay. Let me going back to a cultural thing. Um, Taking photos of locals, is it an issue? Is it a problem? Again, I always say to guests if they ask, always ask someone first, hold the camera up and point at them. If they say no, then don't do it. But generally speaking, are the
hmm
Tahitians open to having photos taken of themselves? And I guess there are lots of opportunities and vantage points to take scenic shots as well around the islands.
yes, you can take pictures pretty well everywhere, and no one. I've never had anyone have any issue. In fact, they expect that if you're a visitor, you're going to be taking pictures of them.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So we discussed the many islands. Just to recap, the Society Islands group, and I'm reading here. I don't know them off my heart like Norman does. Society Islands, which consist of Tahiti, Moorea, Bora Bora, the main ones, Tuamotu, the Marquesas, Austral, and the Gambia Islands. Um, Going back to, well, actually, no, I won't go there yet. Let's go back to my other question. So there's 116 islands that Norman mentioned earlier. We have mentioned Air Tahiti as the inter-island connector and some ferries. But can you expand for our listeners on how to get around the islands, particularly if you want to get out away from the society and to the outer islands? What are the easiest, best ways to do that?
Yeah, so apart from Air Tahiti, which has great connectivity, there is a ferry service that started a few years ago that does visits the Society Islands. So from Tahiti, it goes early in the morning to Huahine, then Raiatea, Taha'a, Bora Bora, and then over to Maupiti. And um, it's a great way to get around the islands. I from what I've been told, the trip going northbound is a little smoother than southbound, just because of currents. So if people are wanting to do it, but one way, northbound tends to be the best route to go for calmness of the sea. But the biggest crossing would be on the ferry is from Tahiti to Huahine. And if you want to just do short little trips, I've done that ferry from Taha'a, right by the Taha'a Resort, over to Bora Bora. It's an hour and a half for that little short segment, and it's quite easy. In fact, it's easier to get from Taha'a to Bora Bora than it is to go all the way over to the Raiatea Airport and then take a flight and all that. So, um, but yeah, Taha'a doesn't have an airport, so they share it a lagoon with Raiatea, and you can go over there for the flights. Apart from that, it is pretty limited. There isn't much out to the Austral Islands and other places. There are some. There's the Arnui that goes out to the Marquesas, but that's more of a cruise ship experience.
So, how are the outer islands supplied with food, etc.? Is it one of these ferry services that also act as a cargo run, or is there a standalone cargo run for all these outer islands?
Yeah,
Even the ones that don't sort of have tourism on them.
yeah. Each group of islands have well, there's freight ships that go to each group of islands, and uh, a freighter that goes to one group of islands is not allowed to go to another. They actually have a limited, maybe one or two or even three freight ships that are allowed to go to a specific port. The reason is to manage the competition because these islands really depend on having their goods delivered to the islands. You can actually see it firsthand on the Aranui going to the Marquesas because they're bringing horses, cars, toilet paper, everything on board this freight ship. And I know Go Away does offer that product, but it is a really unique experience way to see the islands in such a different way. And when you get to the island, they include all these short excursions. The locals will pick you up in their jeep, tour you around, and then bring you back to the ship. So it is a different perspective. It's not like a 5-star deluxe cruise. I'd say it's more 4-star, 3.5, 4-star category. But people think of a freight ship. It's actually a hybrid ship, the Aranui, and they're coming out with a new Aranoa ship in 2027, which will be going to the Austral Islands. But they've built a hybrid ship, so it's 250 cruise passengers, balcony cabins, and all that. Meal service. It's not like some of these freight ships that maybe have 12 people, like the ones that go to from the Gambier Islands to Pitcairn Island, um, which is like only 12 people on that. But yeah, it's a really comfortable way actually to see these islands. But then you get such a different perspective seeing these islands that don't even have some of them that don't even have an airport.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. There was, I don't think it runs anymore. Going back to the Latin world, down the coast of Chile through all the fjords, it was called Navimag, and it was the latter version you mentioned. It was a freight ship with a handful of cabins on board, and it was a cheap way to get down to southern Chile. But there's another cruise company, Hurtigruten, which most people will know. They do cruises around the world now, but their original thing was a freight ship up and down the coast of Norway, which is very similar to what you're talking about now. It's now a tourist ship while still maintaining the freight aspect of it, and you get to see, how supplies are delivered both, and you see what they're taking in. In your instance, you're mentioning horses and cars and everything else. So if someone's using the ferry service just to get from point A to point B, when they arrive, I would assume that the resorts would include or arrange a transfer from the port to the resort of choice.
Yes, you can do that. And yeah, there's whether you're coming in by air or by cruise or ferry, um, there's lots of different transfer services, and I believe GoAway does help arrange all of that as well.
We do. I was just sort of feeding you to give us that answer. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
we do. Yeah, we do. Talking air, we haven't touched on how to get there. There is there a national carrier, Air Tahiti Nui. What other airlines and ways to get in and out of Tahiti?
Oh, other ways to get there are United Airlines through San Francisco,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, Air Tahiti Nui, as you mentioned, through Los Angeles. I heard in February of next year they're discontinuing their Seattle service, unfortunately. Um, but other ways to get there is through Hawaii. There's once a week, and I think next year it'll be twice a week, and starting in 2026 from Hawaii to Tahiti. Otherwise, you can go the long way through New Zealand as well, or through Asia. I believe Air Tahiti Nui has one or two gateways in Asia.
Yeah, and that's a nice little lead into if people are looking at destinations of Australia or New Zealand, Tahiti on the way down or on the way back is a great stopover as well that you can add into your Australia or New Zealand itinerary because Tahiti is sort of the Caribbean area of Australians and New Zealanders. We
Yeah.
hit Tahiti, Fiji, Samoa, the Cooks as our sort of Caribbean getaways. Um, Going back to my fascination with history and the early explorers who were sailing into the New World at the time and then looking to find the Great Southern Continent, which was never there, and Captain Cook in Australia, coming up the east coast of Australia, sorry. He stopped in at Tahiti for supplies. Probably one of the more famous explorers involved in Tahiti was Bligh, Captain Bligh, who, after leaving Tahiti, suffered the famous mutiny on the Bounty. And long story short, some of the mutineers they escaped away to a little island called Pitcairn Island. Now, is that part of French Polynesia, Pitcairn?
Pitcairn is the last British overseas territory in the Pacific, so it is still part of Britain to this day.
Oh, it is. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So is it a place you can visit from Tahiti?
And well, yes, in fact, Tahiti, you have to go through Tahiti to get there.
Oh,
The you basically fly into Tahiti, and then in the southeastern group of islands, the Gambier Islands, where there's one or two flights a week, depending on the time of year, you fly there, and then there's a freight ship, 12 passenger freight ship that goes over to Pitcairn Island. You can actually go do a 1 week trip, 3 nights on the island itself. It's actually the only way you can spend, well, 11 nights if you wait for the ship to come back again.
right.
Um, and that's actually how the Pitcairn Islanders get their supplies are on and off the island. Uh, but people don't realize to get to a British overseas territory, you have to go through French Polynesia.
Yeah,
So,
interesting. Yeah.
but it has some stunning things. Now, also in 2027, the Aranui will be going again back there. They stopped for the last year or two, but they have some, I think, two or three specialty sailings that will include Pitcairn Island as a destination.
Okay, so for those who may not know, as I mentioned, there's mutiny on the excuse me, mutiny on the Bounty. Fletcher Christian is the famous leader of the mutiny. He and some men, some stayed, some went back to England, but most of them disappeared off into the over the horizon to Pitcairn, as it was discovered later on. And I think they've done DNA studies that some of the people on Pitcairn are actually descendants of Fletcher Christian and his crew. So prior to
Yes.
Fletcher Christian landing there, I would assume it was an inhabited island prior to his arrival.
There was no one living on the island prior to
Oh,
them.
really?
They
Oh,
went there, and one of the reasons why it was a great place to hide from the British was because it was improperly mapped on the British chart. They had mapped it a hundred or so miles north, and so they went there, and I think one evening, one of the mutineers who didn't want anybody leaving and giving up their location burnt the ship right offshore,
Ooh,
and they marooned themselves on the island. And if you go there, you can see the anchor that they've pulled out, and that's kind of there for people to take pictures in front of. And there's a lot of history. In fact, there's less than 50 residents left on the island, and I would say over probably 90% are descendants from the mutineers
wow. Okay.
or their spouses. Uh, so, yes, there's still, they even have a doctor that comes there for on rotations. So they've got a doctor on the island, and you're very much in history when you go there.
Yeah, because I was going to ask how many people are there, and you've just answered that, about 50. So it's truly isolated destination. I had no idea it was that isolated and that low in numbers. So my other question was going to be: is it is it kitted out for tourism? I guess the answer there is no. So when you go there, if you choose to go there, I would assume 3 days or the 3 nights would be the usual choice. To quote yourself, you are just basically going to, for those 3 days, you're going to live in history and soak up the fact that you're on such a remote historical island. That would be its main attraction, I gather.
Yes, and some people like to go a little bit longer. The Arnui does about a day and a half on their trips. So that's when I went, and I brought my drone there and took some great videos. But yeah, it's just a couple days. In fact, if you're lucky, you can have dinner with the whole island because they'll do community gatherings from time to time.
So, where would you stay if you were going to stay there for three or longer nights? Is there like a hotel, or is it like a homestay situation?
Uh, it's all homestay style
Yeah.
accommodation, and they provide the meals as well for you.
Wow, that sounds really cool. That's my type of thing. That's what I'd want to do. Excellent. Okay, then. Um, I think we've got a very good insight into Tahiti from a local. Well, he's not a local, but he's been there enough with his family to, I guess, be considered a token local or a honorary local, not token local, an honorary local Tahitian.
The locals tell
Uh,
me I've seen more of their islands than they have.
well, there you go. You are definitely a local then, if that's what they're saying to you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listening audience with before we say goodbye?
I would just say, French Polynesia is an incredible destination to visit. I've been all around the world, and it is one of my favorite destinations. So even if people don't have it as their destination, like you said, stop over on the way to Australia or New Zealand, add in a few extra days, and by the time you're done, you'll be hooked and wanting to go back again.
Yeah, it is. Again, I've not been, but if I extrapolate from the other Pacific islands and the fame that Tahiti has, and I've seen enough imagery to sort of have a taste of it from afar. It is a stunning destination. The islanders' warmth is always an attractive reason to visit. The sunshine, the beautiful beaches, all the things you can do, as you've heard today. Now, if you'd like to know more about Tahiti and trips, obviously you can call your Go Away destination specialists. Many of our specialists have been there multiple times themselves. They deal with it day in and day out, so they can give you all the advice you need, be it a 5-star stay on Bora Bora to a homestay on one of the outer islands. But another way of getting some more information is Norman has his own podcast based around Tahiti. So, Norman, you want to give a little plug to your own podcast?
Yeah. So if it's called Tahiti Travel Podcast, and I also have one called the South Pacific Travel Podcast. So if you're interested in those islands, have a listen to it, and might learn something bit new. I always try to find just different nuggets that the common person doesn't know and is less uh, familiar with.
Yep. And we're all about education here. That's my main role here at Goey, to educate everyone out there on all the ways that you can sell, promote all the wonderful destinations we go to, particularly Tahiti, which will obviously in turn, hopefully, enhance your business and bring in the money, make you hit your targets that you have. And also through the Tahitian Tourism Board, I know they offer FAMs often for further education, as does Go Away. So you've got Go Away, you've got the Travel Academy's modules on Tahiti itself, which goes into some more detail about the three main islands and the outer islands. You have Norman's podcast available for those insider tips and tricks and some hidden information as well. And of course, as always, Tahiti Tourism Board has a lot to offer as well. So on that note, I'd like to thank Norman for his time from Victoria in British Columbia. Did I get that right? Yes. Vancouver
Right.
Island. I always get Vancouver Island, Victoria, Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Is that right?
That's right.
There we go. Okay. No problems. And everyone out there, as always, thank you for your time. We know how busy you are, and we appreciate you listening in. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks, Norman.
All right. Thank you, Don.